and make all the appearances. And, I was on the Tonight Show and was able to do all that sort of stuff. So I'm sorry about that. I know the odds were that I'd, collapse at some point, but it just didn't happen.
It's fine because I was giving myself a haircut for the last 6 months, so it's perfectly fine.
So some other macro influences on projections. We were talking about the AL versus NL, and what's a hot topic now is the designated hitter. At the moment, currently, the rule is that there is no designator of use in the National League, although many sources, including I heard Ken Rosenthal talk the other day, believe that it will happen this year as well. As a projector, which you are, what do you do? How do you handle it? Because obviously there's going to be a projection with and without. Are you going more and picking the one with the designated hitter? Are you doing an average split? Are you just tilting more for a 75-25 chance? What are you doing and presenting on your site?
I'm projecting designated hitter, and I've told my users that, and they understand it. And if they don't believe there's a designated hitter, they in theory anyway should know the batter is to downgrade a bit. And I'll tell you though, everybody talks about Dominic Smith and Kyle Schwarber. It matters. I don't want to say more. It matters for a certain few hitters that are going to be more important, but it matters for the pitching. And I don't know if you guys tracked last year, the AL ERA was lower than the NL.
Yep.
And I predicted that by looking at past data and what would happen when the NL got hitters instead of pitchers. Now, it's only 60 games, but when you're talking about 60 games for 15 teams, now you do have enough data to make this observation, be real, if you will. So the point being, if you're doing projections and you believe there's going to be a DH, and you're looking at X amount of years of previous data for pitchers, you have to make an adjustment on NL pitching as if there was a DH and use that in your foundational average. And it does ding NL pitching enough that, again, the top guys are the top guys. They're not going to be affected by more than one or two ranking spots, which is nothing at that point. But once you get to the middle of the pack, I forget what the exact number was last year. I think it's something like, of course, everybody's numbers are different. I think I had 57 of the top 100 pitchers in the AL, and it's usually the opposite in previous seasons. So to me, all right, we know that we got to be careful with Dominic Smith and J.D. Davis or Kyle Schwarber. Well, Schwarber's going to play. Some of these other players that are going to benefit, maybe Buster Posey plays more if there's a DH because he doesn't have to catch as much. I think we know what to do there, but we're not sure what to do with those middle pitchers. I mean, to me, that's the bigger area of concern, especially because, as you guys know, you just can't afford to make a mistake with pitching in today's game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, in 2018, there were about 6,100 home runs. 2019, there was 6,700. And if you could extrapolate last year's total of 2,304 to a full season, it's around 6,900. Do you think that the ball's still going to be juiced? Are we still playing in that type of home run environment also in this coming year?
Well, I mean, I know it's semantics here. The ball isn't juiced. I mean, that makes all I'm saying by that is that makes it semantics intuitively makes it sound like it's bouncier. But what the ball is such that there's less air resistance, and that's what happened in 2019. That with the seams and some other things, the weight distribution, the ball incurred less air resistance. So I understand. I mean, I know everybody calls it juice, but I just kind of want to make that distinction a little bit. I don't know, and so I'm letting the weighted average do the work for me, because some of the we're still pulling in some of the numbers from 2018. So I'm using that as the hedge. And I know 2018 doesn't get counted as much with most people when they use weighted averages. They use the more recent years, they give them more weight. But even so, to me, that's that. If I'm going to figure out, is it 85% chance, 80% chance, that is baked into using 2018 as part of the foundation for the projections.
Okay, because it's also true with doubles, because it's not just the home runs, it's the doubles. In 2018, 8,200 doubles, 2019, 8,500 doubles, and if you extrapolate out, it's going to be again be an 8,500 doubles. So it's not just home runs, it's hitting for power. It's not just the home runs.
The ball traveled about 10 feet, and the average fly ball distance increased by about 10 feet. And you guys are familiar, your compadre there, Mike Potter, has done some research, and he showed that home runs correlate very well to fly ball distance, not home run distance, fly ball distance. And the ball traveled on the average 5 to 10 feet further due to the decreased wind resistance in 2019.
Right. And of course, the ball going just 5 to 10 miles an hour doesn't help guys like Giancarlo Stanton, who's just going to crush it out of there. Helps guys like Ketel Marte, who will just get it over the fence. And it'll have a bigger, disproportionate increase on their home run totals as compared to some of the really big boppers. It's also important to note.
You can say the same thing about park factors. I just should have mentioned that.
Right.
Park factors do not apply to every hitter linearly. Josh Bell, he gets an improved park factor going from Pittsburgh to National Stadium, but he's another guy. When he hit the ball hard. So he may not actually realize the full extent of the on paper increase. So we'll see.
Right. No, I'm glad I brought that point up, because that is a good distinction, that it works both for homers, for park factors, or anything. We're going to talk a little bit about valuation here. And by valuation, I'm talking about taking a set of projections and turning them into some kind of ranking, or what we like to do on the show, an auction value. We play a lot of auctions here, and we've said many times in the show, if you are drafting, compute auction values anyways. They'll give you your ranks, but it'll also tell you the distance between any player and the relative value. But anyways, how do you get them? You run a valuation exercise. There are three main classes of methods. There's SGP, standing gain points, Z-scores, and the PVM method. Maybe, Todd, you can run us through the highlights of each of those three and how they work, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about pros and cons of each.
All right, so first, I don't call them values, because I think value is past tense.
Okay.
I don't think we know the value.
Right.
We know the potential. So I call them auction prices. To me, because and I know it's all semantics, and people go to their favorite dictionary and counter what I said, and I'll go to my favorite dictionary, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. By calling it potential and by calling it a price, I don't care what the real definitions are. It hammers in the fact that they're not static, that they're not in stone, that they are a range, an estimate, a guess, and that's why I think the connotation is different. But I accept the fact that they've been called values forever. So I no longer, the older I get, I'm more, whatever that you want to call it value. That I understand what you're talking about. Anyway, so SGP, standing gains points, is probably the most popular of the methods that are out there, and what valuation does is it distributes the available dollars, and it's the number of teams and the total, the budget for the auction, usually $260. It distributes that budget over the entire player pool, the draft-worthy player pool. So if there's, in a 12-team league, if you're drafting 23 players, it awards them over 12 times 23, so that everybody can fill a legal roster with a player of at least $1 and above. So, but all the three systems, so they're basically distributing the available budget over the draft-worthy player pool according to, their percentage contribution of some particular unit, some particular measuring device. In SGP, what the measuring device is, if 5 home runs increase or give you another point in the standings, then for every 5 home runs a batter hits, he earns 1 SGP. Right? If 20 RBI, if the difference in standings is 20 RBI, and a guy has 10 more RBI projected than another guy, he's awarded 0.5 more SGPs than the other hitter. But that's kind of what you do is every player gets awarded SGPs for the categories. You add up all the number of SGPs. So, some players may have, 15 SGP over the 5 categories. Others have, 13.7 and, negative 2.2, et cetera, et cetera. And the SGP are added up for the player pool, and whatever the percentage of the SGP that each player contributes, he gets that percentage of the dollars. And, zero sum economy. So when at the end of the day, you add up, if there are 168 hitters in a 12-team, 14-batter league, the 168th hitter is given $1, and then it gets scaled upward based upon the number of SGP. Standard deviation is similar in that each player is awarded, I don't know what it's, a standard deviation. We'll just call it a standard deviation. Whatever, a unit, however many standard deviations his projection is, you add up all the standard deviations of the positive player pool, and the percentage the percentage that player contributes to the total standard deviations is his, air quote, value or price. PVM, percentage value method. Here, it's straightforward in that it's not worrying about standings or standard deviations. If you hit 40 homers, you're getting the credit based upon the total number of homers in the positive value player in the draft worthy player pool. If you steal 35 bases, you get your stolen base dollars allocated based upon the percentage of stolen bases related to the entire pool. And then again, there's some algebraic manipulations to make the numbers, logical at the end, but you add up the categorical contributions, and that's how the PVM, percentage value method, that's how it comes up with this. So it's measuring stick, if you will, is the statistic itself, the percentage in itself, leaving out some of the in the weeds things, replacement and some other things. Todd, how do you make it so that the last one's $1, et cetera, marginal value? That's kind of the rough review of the different systems.
Right. No, great stuff about doing that. So the question, of course, is which one do you prefer? And I'll tell you my perspective. I think it really depends on what the league situation you're in. So I'm an actuary, and we do some analysis when we're projecting losses, fires that happen in buildings. And there's 2 types of analysis. You can do an experience and an exposure. Experience is saying, look at all the fires that happened in the past and see how often and frequently they came and how severe it was. But then there's number 2 called the exposure method, where you have some policy limits and you have houses and you look at the industry and see how houses happen there with the value limits elsewhere, and you apply it to your current portfolio. So that if you, let's say you, got more expensive buildings now, you wouldn't be able to count on old experience because you don't have the same portfolio of houses. But if you look at what the industry has done and apply it to what you have, that's a better method. So I like to use SGP for leagues that I've been in for a while, where I know what the standings gain points are. I know that stolen bases are important. I know that it's very sticky. I know that that four stolen bases really gets you a lot. But if you're in a new environment, if you're in a new league totally, or if something about the baseball has changed dramatically, I prefer the Z-score, the standard deviation method, because it's a more general term. You don't have to know how standings went. You just use the dispersion, the math inherent in the population, and that tells you how to distribute points. Do you agree with that, Todd? And what do you use?
I agree with the principles, but I don't know if I should say the spoiler now or I'll keep the spoiler to the end. First, SGP is inherent. It's terribly flawed. You don't start gaining points in a category until you eclipse the last place team.
Right.
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 So what you've done, you use SGPs. Is the homer in the Steele SGB pretty close?
I don't think so.
Well,